They say there are valleys where time stands still, where the wind carries ancient secrets, and where buried truths eventually begin to breathe beneath the ground. In a remote mountainous state in America, there was a small town with stone roads, fog-wrapped trees, old wooden houses, and a single lonely church, as if the village had vanished from the world forever. People rarely came to this place, and those who did often never returned. One autumn evening in that same valley, a weary man arrived with his 2 young daughters. His name was Ezekiel. Wrinkles crossed his face, traveled dust covered his clothes, and deep sorrow was reflected in his eyes. With him were 2 identical girls, the first named Rebecca and the second named Rachel. They were only 9 years old, yet their eyes carried a seriousness rarely found in ordinary children. Rebecca was quick to speak and bright in her smile, yet her words carried an unusual depth, while Rachel was quiet and reserved, but her gaze seemed capable of reading everything within a person. People often said that these girls were not ordinary children. The family had traveled to many churches, and wherever they went, people found themselves revealing their secrets without understanding why. Some believed it was the power of prayer, some thought it was coincidence, and others felt fear growing quietly in their hearts. This town became another stop in their journey. The church priest, William Phillips, welcomed them into his home, offering simple food, the smell of burning wood, and the whistle of cold air outside. Everything seemed normal, until Rebecca suddenly smiled at the priest's wife and said that her garden roses had recovered from the illness they suffered 3 years earlier. Silence filled the room. The spoon slipped from the woman's hand, and both of them knew that no outsider could possibly have known about that hidden illness. Rebecca innocently explained that she had seen it in a dream during their journey, and that was how she knew. For the first time, a cold wave passed through Phillips's heart. Night passed, yet something within the silence had awakened. The next morning, Ezekiel sat beside the fire, lost in thought, and told the priest that the girls often saw dreams, but the ones they had recently were different, heavy, and filled with darkness. At that moment, Rebecca stood by the door with a strange seriousness in her eyes, and said that something was hidden beneath the arch of the church, a secret that should not exist there. Phillips's heart began to race, because there truly was something buried there, something he desperately wished he could forget. The real question was no longer how a child could say such a thing, but how she could possibly know. And that was only the beginning. Phillips's heart continued to pound uncontrollably as he tried to dismiss Rebecca's words as childish imagination. Yet the problem was that something truly was hidden beneath the church floor. That hidden object was a symbol of his weakness, his sin, and his deepest shame. He rose in silence, walked toward the church, and stared at the wooden board where he had hidden a bottle months earlier, a bottle that reminded him every day of his failure. No one knew this secret except God, and now a 9-year-old girl knew it as well. Phillips's hands began to tremble. At that moment, Rachel stepped forward, her voice soft but her words unbearably heavy, as she described how the bottle was wrapped in blue cloth that once belonged to a baby's blanket. It felt as if the strength had drained from Phillips's legs, because that cloth truly came from his deceased child's blanket. This was not a guess or coincidence. It was undeniable truth. Ezekiel calmly explained that this ability had been with the girls since childhood, and even he did not fully understand how they knew such things. A single question echoed in Phillips's mind. If these girls knew his secret, how many other secrets did they know? That same day, the Sunday prayer gathering filled the church with people who were fascinated by Ezekiel's sermon. Yet the real events began after the service ended. Rebecca approached a respected farmer and gently said that he would return the money he had taken from church donations, because her father said that repentance brings forgiveness. The man's face turned pale, for he had indeed been stealing money for months. Rachel then approached an elderly woman and quietly told her that her husband was not dead, that he was alive somewhere else, and that she was hiding his letters. The old woman staggered, because this secret was also true. After that, secrets began to surface one after another, including hidden sins, false reputations, and concealed crimes. Silence spread through the church as fear and astonishment froze everyone in place. They were no longer seen as children, but as living mirrors reflecting buried truths. Rebecca finally stood before the altar, her voice steady and echoing, and declared that the place was sacred. Yet blood had once been spilled there when an entire family was murdered, and some people still knew the truth. It felt as if the church walls themselves were holding their breath. An elderly man stood up, his voice trembling as he asked how she could know events that had happened before she was born. Rebecca calmly recited the children's names, their clothes, their markings, and even the details of their toys. The faces of the older residents turned pale. Rachel added that the family had come seeking shelter, but they were killed inside the church. Silence transformed into a silent scream. Phillips realized that the entire town had been built upon an enormous lie, yet the deepest truth was still waiting to be revealed. The heavy silence inside the church became an unbearable weight, as people looked at one another without finding the courage to speak. A large crowd gathered in the church courtyard, including legal officers, the local governor, and armed soldiers, as the town's long silence transformed into restless noise.